Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be with you again, and I already begin to see familiar faces. Joshua Singer, good to be back, and Robert, it's good to see you. And Alejandro, I suppose this J is not pronounced, but also especially David Carrier. David is a new friend, and we're getting research together. It's good to have you online. This is a good session for those of you that have been with us for a long time and those of you that are joining us. This is a good session for us to take things to the next level. We're going to be talking about copywriting, but ultimately I want to make a point that's critical for every person who either is on this broadcast now or who joins us later. You cannot delegate the message. You may delegate the words, but the message cannot be delegated. And I want to talk to you about how you, either as a copywriter, stay on point within that message, or as a leader who employs copywriter, you learn how to capture and control the critical sequence of thought that's essential to driving velocity in your funnel. And to do that, I just want to remind you that all during these last several weeks, we've been studying and learning Facebook with you. We've run test after test after test, and the last test, we had preliminary data, but now we have complete data, and it's interesting because we achieved a CPA of 250 when we use Facebook's lookalike audience approach, but we achieved a CPA of $1.49 when we use the interest-based approach. That's the final numbers totaling a 50.66% improvement in CPA by understanding that. At the end of this time together, I'm going to take you into a new test, and in that new test, we're going to drill down deeply on the interest-based piece. Obviously, with that 50% improvement, we have made progress. But what can we do to further that progress? Testing is a restless process. It never stops. It's hungry for more and for better. And if that stops inside of you, and thus it stops inside of your organization, you're going to see that when you're not going forwards, you're going backwards. So we're going to push harder, and we're going to talk about how to zero in on more interest-based terms and have you help us develop those in the next experiment. In the meantime, I want to show you something. Take a look at this page. This person became a good friend of mine, in fact, a very close friend. I just emailed him this morning. We've known each other now for years. He currently is the CEO of a massive organization that drives about, I don't know, I think it's $40 billion in travel. In any event, he originally was the CEO of this company. Take a look. WordPress was part of PR Newswire, which merged in Decision. We had an experimental platform that we created so that we could drive results. We began running these research sort of agendas across his messaging grid, and it began with the messaging and the copywriting on this page. Take a look at this page and ask yourself, what could you do to improve its performance? Now, I have shared this in the past, but never at the depth we're going to go into today. So take a look and say, what change would you make right now? I see David Fogel on the line also. And Brett, I see you're writing copy right now for a client. Excellent. Let's tie this together so that it's both strategic and tactical. If you're coming in as a leader and you're thinking strategically about your messaging, this is the right broadcast for you. But if you're Brett and you're writing copy right now, you'll find how to apply it in the same way. Look at WordPress.com. The words WordPress.com, and then of course the headline, and share with me some changes you'd make. I'm watching because I know there's a delay. Use more specific and customer-centric language, says Robert. Someone else. Bring the CTA above the fold, says Josh. All right? Someone else. I'm watching. They're coming in. Yes, that's another good concept. But bear with me for just a moment because I'm going to unpack this. Stephanie says, use better language, like get more readers, all right? We're going to unpack this in a moment, but I want to point out something. This is an image from a trip I just took running a quick win intensive with senior executives In this case, it's a very large company. I just finished one with a lot of smaller companies combined. This company is the largest company in its industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar group. And we're running another Quick Win Intensive. It's coming up on July 10th, I believe. If you want to find out how to be a part of that, join that link. We don't just teach there. We actually work together to find the wins. But for now, let's go back to that experiment. It's test protocol 1635 in our library. Let's drill down on the control. We've talked about that. Suleiman said the gigantic WP logo is obtuse. So true. It takes a while to understand what's happening here. Actually, Suleiman, their logo, the WordPress logo, is bigger than the logo of the company, which was PR Newswire. This is a problem because there are 3 questions you have to answer at the top of every page. Somebody, do you remember the 3 questions? As you're writing them, because I've got so much to cover with you, I'll just touch one. It is, first of all, where am I? And on that page, if you're not sure you're in the right place, you use the green arrow, you use the back button. Confusion is solved on the internet with the back button. And I see the questions coming in. What can I do here? Good call, Brett. And what is the third one? Brett's got it again. Why should I do it? Those 3 questions are critical. So with all of that together, stay with me and let's look at the treatment, because you're going to see that in this process of hypothesis development, first we diagnose weaknesses. But in a multivariate test, which often does not produce big wins, all that we often do is scramble elements and see if one of those elements possibly produces a higher conversion rate. It's not smart. What we need instead is a cohesive hypothesis with a theory of mind, the mind of that prospective customer. And so we diagnose, but we take the weaknesses that we see and we look for a holistic solution that can be built around a coherent picture of the thinking process, which is what you see here. Now, we could tear this apart, and we're going to. In fact, we can improve it, and we did. But I'm going to use this page to teach you how to think about copywriting, either as the leader or the tactician. And to do that, what I'd like to do is just share with you the difference. There's the control, and side by side, you can see the treatment. And by the way, Stephanie, you're right. You can see that we've adopted that. And in fact, I taught about headlines, and you can see how this fits the teaching around headlines. What we need to see is how well does this approach to copywriting work in this tested scenario. Now, I mention that because it's not enough for you to join me today to get advice based on experience. Experience is valuable, but we teach here there are no expert marketers. There are only experienced marketers and those who are expert at testing. And that's a huge difference in approach. So we had to go further to test the concept, to test the approach. And in doing so, I'll just share with you what happened. You can actually see the trend lines of the experiment pulled right out of our online test protocol. Although we work with all the testing programs, we patented the primary approaches in the earliest days of testing and built our own testing program that we use internally. And we have now run over 20,000 treatments through our protocol and testing approach. This is one of those. You'll notice the increase, 321%. Now, that is a revenue increase, and it's a dramatic increase that is a result of focusing specifically on the message. I would also point out for you that it's not the size of the number itself, because on a small flow, a 300% increase may not be that significant in terms of revenue, but it's always significant when you think about it in terms of thought impact, in terms of the way the messaging is impacting the thought sequence. So what do you do? In fact, here's the question. How can we consistently write effective copy without delegating the essence of the message? And that is a critical piece, because copywriters may come and have wonderful ways that they can phrase words. But without understanding the sequence of thought, the essence of the value proposition, and the most effective way to articulate it, the copywriter is left handicapped by the leader who would expect them to know it. Worse, an agency comes along and thinks with let's call it a shallow understanding of the business and the essence of its drivers. They tried to put clever words together. Now, I mentioned this just a few, I guess, on the last session, but I was on the phone with one of the students from this program just today, earlier this morning. He's launching a new offering. He's an entrepreneur. It's a remarkable new faucet, unlike anything ever produced or in production. And he went to look at his competitors in the same way that I asked to on the last YouTube Live, and he saw the trendy phrase. I think it was something like this: "Are you ready for awesome?" As in AWESOME. What a horrific headline. It's not communicating anything properly, and more importantly, the entire message of the page was off. And he was absorbing that and thinking about that in the light of the last teaching. Now, I'm sharing that with you to talk about this particular situation. How can we effectively write copy? How can we write copy that brings the essence of the message in a powerful way? How can we create encounters instead of web pages? You think about that as we work back through a 2,000-year-old process to understand the mind, the way it arranges information, and how we connect that to messaging. So, I want to share with you a slide from our research, and you'll notice at the bottom of that slide are the two best books probably ever written on story. The first is Aristotle's Poetics, and I've grappled with it for years in my philosophy work. And then you'll see Robert McKee, who is a brilliant screen doctor and story writer and teacher, and who has created a remarkable impact on the entire television industry with his approach to story. I recommend the book. He doesn't talk about copywriting directly, but the entire book is about copywriting, if you understand what I'm going to teach today. And then I want you to notice in that 3-act approach, so paying attention to that top bar, you'll see that every story, every movie you ever went to had a 3-act play. Every now and then, there are some trendy approaches to use a 5-act approach, but almost all stories are 3-act or 5-act. There have been attempts to have a no-story approach, particularly out of Europe. It's the equivalent of modern art, and in my mind, it's a mess. It doesn't provide resolution, and certainly it's not the kind of approach that you want to take to your copywriting, because without resolution, you don't have a sell. So follow this 3-act and think about it. There are 3 pieces. The exposition. The exposition is a key maneuver that takes place at the beginning, and there's some things you need to understand about it that are closely connected to television more than film. So I want to combine TV for you, and I want you to think about internet, and I'm going to ask my audience a question. What does television and internet have in common? Particularly, if you're trying to sort of solve that in a new way, I'm going to take my whiteboard and I'm going to write over here an area that doesn't have a commonality with them. Now, all 3, we're talking about stories or copywriting, but what is it that television and the internet have in common? Think about it for a moment. Use your chat feature. See if you can answer any of this. The low cost of changing the channel, David Carrier said. David, I'm going to take what you said. Low cost of changing channel. Josh was easy to leave, and I'm going to just hold up the answer to that for those of you watching. This is what they have in common. They have a device that can be used to terminate the existence of the party who is communicating the message. In one click, that program is turned off. In one click, that website, that message, that should be, even if it's not, conversation is terminated. They can terminate your existence in a split second with a single button. Now, when you understand that, you'll know why this is critical. I also don't know if you're aware of this, but as part of our research, we produced a great deal of television. I ran a production company in California. I was the executive producer of the series Extreme Courage, hosted by Danny Glover. We sold that series to Fox for $22 million, and we had to deal with it very, very carefully, the same problem that we have right now when we look at a website. And by the way, there's live op coming. We're pulling up a website from people in our community, and we're going to apply what you're learning right now in just a few minutes to their website. So I just want you to see the commonality, because in film you've paid the money and you're sitting there, and they can take a longer time to build exposition. If you're looking at the slide, let's go back to the slide. If you're looking at the slide, that first rise where there is a corner, look at the blue line, you'll see a rise, that first corner. Between the beginning and that first corner in that slide, you have to achieve something in television we called story click. By the way, in my city, during Sweeps Week, I was asked by the leading network to produce the 6 o'clock news for the lead story for the 6 o'clock news for a week so that they could win Sweeps Week. And I worked with a team of leaders there, and one of the things that impressed me was they understood this better than the directors that I worked with in Hollywood. Much better. And I met many of the directors that you know, like William Friedkin, Billy Friedkin, who really became a legend. He launched the first car chase in The French Connection, and he directed The Exorcist and Jade and many other movies. I spent time with these people, but those people in television were honed to capture your attention immediately. And I share that with you to suggest that when you think about story click, it's that point in the story where you suddenly get it. Now, I've seen some fiascos. There's a film called Jacob's Ladder that looked like it was going somewhere, and it felt like you were almost there over and over again, but it never arrived. And you would leave the theater, people leave the theater furious. It might be that some esoteric critic found joy there, but the rest of us didn't. And I'm sharing that with you because I want you to think about how you're achieving story click on your page. If you don't achieve story click very fast, you won't get anywhere. So just notice there are 3 pieces: exposition, rising action, the climax and resolution. We are now going to apply that to a landing page to think about story. By the way, when you see me looking over to the right, it's because, as I've said in other broadcasts, Paul Cheney, my content expert who's working with me, is sitting right there, and we're sharing jokes about Jacob's Ladder and some of the content. Plus, Paul sometimes gives me direction, or just in general ridicules me, makes fun of me, throws things at me, and tries to overall diminish my attention. But I'll get even with him before the day is over. So stay with me and let's get to the first point. Arrest attention in the exposition. That's a sort of a fancy way to say something, but it's pretty important. You've got to arrest, capture, seize their attention, and that happens in the exposition phase. So look at a web page with me and say, what is the exposition on this page? And by the way, Ari just said the story side then has to be engrossing so you can't leave. Ari, a story must capture your attention, and it does that when you start to care about the outcome. But before you know enough to care about the outcome, we have to get your attention, and that's what happens in the exposition phase. So here I'm going to drill down on the exposition. And to do that, let's just go down, and you'll see I'm look at the cutaway on the slide. We're moving into that red line across the blue. We're looking at the first phase, exposition. And we're going to now drill down with exposition where it occurs on this page. This page is using a combination of headline and a combination of subheadline to accomplish something very important. It's achieving the entire critical first phase of exposition. And in doing that, it's doing something we taught to you before, but it's doing more. Let's talk about the 3 things that you've got to accomplish in that first short portion of your page. Look at it together with me, and let's write them down. I've taught this in a previous program on headlines. What's the first thing a headline has to do? Somebody tell me. It has to, go ahead, I'm watching you, write it in. Yes, it has to capture attention. Now we know that from the previous teaching. If it doesn't capture attention, like get ready for awesome, or are you ready for awesome, doesn't capture my attention. In fact, I don't even know what it means. It's confusing and it's annoying. So capture attention, we know that. But it has to do something else. And this is a micro yes in that progress up the inverted funnel. What's the second thing it has to do? The second thing a headliner has to do, so you get me to look. You get me to give you just a moment of my attention. What do you need to do after that? That's right. David just nailed it, David Carrier. You have to convert attention. So I'm just going to abbreviate. Attention is just that momentary look, but you got to stop me from looking away. And that happens when you convert attention to interest. Now that's just when you're thinking headline, but when you're thinking web page, another thing you can do if you artfully use your subheader is you can achieve, I'm going to abbreviate it, story click. Now, I'm using the language of film and television to make the point, but you can achieve story click, which means that they get the essence of what you're trying to offer. How many times have you looked at a page and you can't even figure out what you're supposed to do or what they're trying to say or the essence? The why, I mentioned, I saw in some of these notes, somebody said the why, tell why, but they're not ready for the why until they know the what. Selling me, convincing me with reasons before I know what you're trying to convince me to do is a problem in the sequence of thought. Your job first is to make it crystal clear what it is you're offering me. And then once I understand that, your job is to swiftly give me reasons to support your desire for me to take advantage of that offer and exchange value with you. And the essence of that argument is the value proposition. But right now, we know what you are doing with this headline if we think about it through the psychology of the customer. I'm just going to drill down. Get more readers. Now, I'm the person reading, and I want more readers. And I want them now. And this headline says, as early as tomorrow. And then, I still don't know what that means exactly, right? Now, I know I'm on a press release site. I know I'm on a PR-related site. So I get a sense of the get more readers. It means, people from what we sometimes call unearned media. But notice what comes next. WordPress is partnered with iReach by PR Newswire to help create more visibility for your blog across an unparalleled network of 1,000 websites and search engines. Do you see that just with this, we've captured attention, beginning with that key word that we've talked about in the past, the get word. You don't have to use that exact word, but we started point first with what I want, not what you want, what I as a prospective customer want. And now we've converted that to interest with a couple of key points. As early as tomorrow is a masterful stroke. It intensifies my appeal factor, which is going to intensify the importance of the value proposition. And then it talks about WordPress partnering with iReach. In fact, in a way, it's suggesting exclusivity, or I can't get this anywhere else quite like this. But more importantly, I'm getting interested, and now I understand why I should probably invest more in this conversation that you've began with me. That is, going to what happens below. We have just been moving, just like we've been teaching, we have been moving through exposition. We are setting up the story. Does everybody understand that? Are you following me? In fact, give me some feedback because I'm reading your feedback to adjust how fast I move and where I should set up and drill, because I believe that a teacher's job is to serve the audience. And if we're careful, the optimization occurs here and now, not before I get up to speak, but you optimize me. And that's why you don't always see me staring into the camera, because if you were in the room, I'd look right in your eyes, but I can't see you. And so I look at the camera. Over here, I look at all the feedback. Over here, I can see an image of a huge screen with what my presentation is looking like, if it's on the slide or the whiteboard. Behind that is a huge, wider than my arm span, giant screen with my main teaching content. Over here is my content sort of expert coaching me as I go forward. And then in the back through the glass are all the engineers and technical people making certain that we do this right. So you're going to see my eyes move around, but it's because I need to be optimized as I speak, which brings me to the next point. So we've been thinking about exposition, and we've said it has to accomplish three things. So how can we improve that? Well, for those of you who haven't already seen this broadcast, one of our earlier YouTube Live is called The Zen of Headline Writing. And look it up. It's mclub.com/headlines. Watch it. It's free. and let's apply. So this was a page from one of the members of our community. I'd like you to look at it. I can't teach you well. You know, this is not something where I just teach in order to bait you to buy a course. I'm trying to teach you now, and I need you to apply. This is how we learn. Take a look at that page. Tell me, what's wrong with the exposition phase? 3 things: capture attention, convert it to interest, and achieve story click, or communicate the essence of the offer, what it's all about. Take a look at that. How would you improve that? Or what is wrong with that, somebody? I'm watching. By the way, thanks for the feedback. I see it coming in. So digital farming's leading software platform. By the way, I haven't seen this. I know that when I stepped up here, I clicked through the slides and I saw it then for a split second, but this is my first take with it too. And I am suitably awed, but only in the negative sense. All right, so what are you saying here? Should start with the reader customer. That's right. It's an unqualified claim. Yes, what does leading mean? Vague and nasty. Get more bushels from each acre. Thank you, David. That's good. Swap the subheader with a headline. The subheader is much better. Good call, Ralph. It is much better. But even then, I wouldn't use analyze your farm because that sounds like work. Tell me what I'm going to get. I don't really want to analyze anything. I want to get something, and the analysis is how I get it. So focus on what I'm going to get. And keep going. I'm listening. Subhead is proposition, I think. Increase farm output, Mike says. Good. What does that even mean? All right, now you're doing really well. So let's just break this down. Digital farming's leading software platform. Digital farming's, first of all, I'm sure the prospective customer knows what that is. I don't even know what digital farming is. My first thought is this a game I play online? Or is it, because you really can't farm digitally. I assume you can use digital analytics to improve your farming, but that's not the same thing. Secondly, all you've done is you've thrown some words up that don't have a complete thought. Digital farming's leading software platform. Is there a subject predicate there? Is there even an understood subject there? The answer is no. And in fact, even if I turn that into a sentence, it wouldn't mean much. I think, let's turn it into a sentence. Let's help them. Let's say Climate Field View Climate Field View is digital farming's leading software platform. That's what they're saying. Now, I don't know what Climate Field View is. I don't know why I should care, but that's what they're saying. Is that enough? No. What does a leading software platform mean? I'll tell you what it means. We're not number one, but we want you to think we are. So we'll use a vague word like leading because we can't actually give you a statistic to show you that we're number one. It is a deception device, and it's vague and useless, completely, totally useless. And I mean this, again, this is a member of our community. Please, if you're watching this, we're not trying to beat you up. I'm trying to help you. And when you hear in my voice this sarcasm, it's because I'm pretending I'm the customer. I have to get into their skin, into their feeling. And you felt that when you go through the internet and you're surfing and you see something like this. And until I tap into that consumer in me, then the marketer in me gets in the way. And that's very important. That's one of the problems with agencies. You've got to be that expert consumer, not the expert agency person. By the way, I'm not anti-agency, but it's a common problem I see, putting some clever thing at the top of the page and missing the point. And the point is, what are you going to do for me? You got a second to get my attention, and if you don't get it now, I'm leaving. That's the reality. I will terminate you. I will erase your existence. I am for you at this moment in your business, God. If you don't realize that's what you're dealing with, you can't create your page right. Now, digital farming's leading software platform, then analyze your farm's data in one place. I don't even know what that means. Like, give me a picture, not that thing on the right. Is that something else? What's Climate Field View for planting corn, soybean? What does that mean? Is that the same offer as this? I think it's a video, but there's a live chat over the top of it. What happens when I click? How long is it? What should I expect? And why is it way over on the right-hand side? I don't know. And then, like, I don't understand, like, what is the image doing for me? Zero. I've seen an empty field, I don't know, 100,000 times. And an empty field sitting there with a piece of equipment doesn't have anything to do. What I need to see is an image that communicates the value proposition, probably the instruments that you actually look at in the analytics, somehow combined with a picture of farming that helps me get the gist, the whole gist of what you're trying to say. You could help me achieve story click if you gave me the right picture. But I don't have story click, I haven't got my attention captured, and I have not got anything to convert to interest. Does everybody understand that? Okay? The point is, I want you to be able to do this right now. And the real point is, we all got to help Brett write his copy, because he's writing copy, even as he's on here. I'm so boring. He's working while he's online. And so I feel sorry for him for putting him through this punishment. And secondly, I want to help him. And thirdly, in a more serious tone, all of us here, we've got copy that needs to be improved. We have messaging that needs to be dramatically improved, including at Mech Labs and Marketing Sherpa. And there's a ton of that going down right now as we're testing so many things. All right, Brett, I think I got your name right. All right, let's keep going. Now, I want to show you the second step. This is where it starts to get deeper. And if you're an executive and you're thinking, let me just zero in right now as I show you this next diagram. So there we are. We got to come back to this point. We got to build interest in the rising action. Now, action doesn't rise in a straight line. You got to understand that. In a minute, I'm going to explain that. And then I want to make this point I was going to make just a moment ago to a senior leader who is employing copywriters. They may be able to put dots on the line, but you, only you, can tell them what the line is. And I'll explain that as we go a little further here. So let's look back at this. So we've got story click by the time they get through that subheader. But how do we take them to the next place? Now notice what part of the line is red. Remember the blue under exposition? We've moved to that next series of moves here. We are starting rising action. And rising action, I'd take that red line and drop it one more piece right to the last piece of exposition in a future slide. That whole rise, that whole arc, that angle is rising action. But has anyone noticed it's not a straight line? Why is that? Well, I can give you lots of examples, but I think the easiest way is to talk about an action movie. And I doubt everybody joining me has watched a James Bond movie, but Ian Fleming created a multi-billion-dollar empire by fielding a really unique approach at the time he did it to novels and to film. If you ever watch a Bond movie, here's some things you'll see that they all have in common. It is a formula, carefully done. Mission Impossible followed the Bond formula and essentially copied it. And some of you have seen Mission Impossible. But I want to tell you two things about a Bond movie that if you watch, you'll see every time. Number one, it doesn't start slow and artful. It starts in the middle of the action. You literally don't even know what's going on, but you see someone, hanging out of an airplane, or someone, in some sort of contraption about to explode or be fed to sharks or whatever it is, but you're instantly trying to see what's going to happen. Now, there's a difference, and for the copywriters joining me, understand this. There's a difference between suspense and curiosity. And we use both as a forward draw. I'm going to write a book in the future on mixing story drug. I started writing it 30 years ago. I have journals and journals full of notes. The Greek word is pharmacia. And to me, when you craft a story or good copy, it's like mixing a drug. And story is a drug because when story takes over, you become participants in an altered state. You bypass the critical sensor. Like, why are you staring at flickering lights, zeros and ones, pixels on a movie screen? Why are people crying? Why are you still sitting there paying $10 for popcorn? Obscene amounts of money for a Coke. Enduring, all of the abuse that goes on in that situation because something magical is happening in the human mind, and you've got to understand that to write great copy. And I'll tell you something, here's how suspense and curiosity work. Suspense is different in that you care and want to know the outcome. And it generally means that there's something or someone you care about and you're trying to see how it will turn out. Curiosity, it draws you forward in a different way. It keeps you in your seat by making you want to know what's going on. Now, curiosity is the way movies start. And the Bond movie starts with curiosity. Like, what is happening? Why is this happening? Why is he in that situation? And who is this person? But as the movie evolves, curiosity matures into suspense, and suddenly you start caring about the characters and the outcome. Now, why is that important? Because eventually here's the other thing that a Bond movie has in common with all great copywriting, and that you need to understand, and it's any action movie almost, but Bond, I would say, is an originator of the formula in modern times, Ian Fleming's work. And that is this. If you'll notice, James Bond is never out of a bad situation before the next one is building. The writer's got you like, is he going to survive in this burning vehicle? And you don't know if he's going to survive, but about the time he survives, and you realize, this is your emotional line drops, you're being pulled up into another arc instantly. One after another. The entire movie does this. And all it does is it does that until it reaches the climactic arc, where he is trying to defeat the evil genius before he takes over the world. And it looks like he's losing and everything's about to go to hell. And somehow at the last second, he pulls it out. That sense of what's going to happen is never resolved without hooking you forward. And that's the way a story works, and that's the way good copywriting works. Because what's going on when we write our copy is we're drawing them forward with curiosity and suspense. And if we don't do it right, we lose them. And we don't get the micro yes. And if we don't get the micro yes, we don't get the sale. All right, so let's study rising action a little bit more. How does it happen here? Well, we think about those things that are concerns to you and things that you might care about, the outcome, even suspense. And we drill down on those. And we do so by using a combination of visuals and high impact sentence combinations, not hype, but high impact, very different. And the high impact is supported. Take a look on the right. We're telling a story on the right. Just forget everything on the left. This is what a good image is supposed to do. Look at the story it's telling. And that's a true, we designed this page. We had to get this true incident and the data and build the graphic because we didn't want to lie. We didn't want to fail the trust trial, nor did we want to feel a horrific feeling that comes when you think you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. And marketing doesn't have to engage that. The connotation of marketing is the worst thing that's ever happened to marketers. Marketing is nothing more than it requires a deep understanding of how human beings draw conclusions. In marketing, we influence conclusions so that we can influence the decision, so that we can influence the behavior. Now, as you think about that, look at that picture. What's it doing? See, it builds interest, but it illustrates the value proposition. I promoted my blog with outreach. I just look at that point right there, that the box with that sharp corner points at the end. Look at the arrows suddenly go way up. Do you see the rise in the arrow? Isn't that what all of us want? And that story tells it all. And so you see the image, and now without even reading the words, you get the point. You get the point, and you see the value proposition in action, which makes the words not only easier to understand, but more credible. And for those of you that have been with me when I've taught value proposition, you understand that if I don't understand it, I can't believe it. I've taught this. If I understand it, but I don't believe it, it doesn't matter. Before you can make me want it and decide I can't get it anywhere else, that's the work of marketing, fostering conclusions in my mind. I first have to understand it and believe it. And the brilliance of that simple little graphic is it's doing both. It's making it easier to understand and easier to believe. By the way, I'm going to write a word on the board. They don't have to believe it completely, but they have to understand it and believe it enough. Enough to take the next step up the rising arc, up the next step in your rising action, up the next step in the second act of your story. Now, along with that, you see 3 important pieces of information. It wouldn't be powerful if it was 9. 5 is good, 3 is better. Be very careful about too many. But get more views and traffic when I reach distribute your content to 1,000 websites. Let me stop you right there. If you're one of those people who says, wait a second, we already said that. You're right, we did. And we're going to say it a lot of times. We're not trying to win an award for grammar. We don't have a natural resistance to redundancy. Vision leaks. People need to hear it enough times, and that's the essence. It's like Stephen with his billboards everywhere when he launched the iPod that said 1,000 songs in your pocket. It wasn't the first time you saw that. It impacted you the way the 5th time, and the 6th time. So say it again. And then now we're going to elucidate it. Gain up to 14% more views of your content. Release when it's accompanied by a photo. And notice those little blue, notice how we've layered the content. Marketer, listen. Copywriter, listen. There's more there if that's not enough for you. But everybody doesn't need the same amount of information. So we don't put it all in front of you. We layer it. And we either layer it or we sequence it. In order to bring a simple, clear understanding, the goal here is to layer the content or to sequence the content so that I am only seeing what I need to see when I need to see it. Learn to achieve great clarity through simplicity, but learn to achieve simplicity through layering and sequencing. And that brings me, if you're doing anything else right now, this is the one time when I would just stop, because I'm going to point out to you that there is a horrific crime being committed on the internet, a crime against the mind, and I want to show you the difference. And I'm going to do it with 2 little illustrations on the board. And if you miss this, you probably miss one of the most important things I have to say today. And the reason I'm setting it up that way is because this is something I'm seeing every single place I go. I just came from teaching 6 CEOs and their teams, their marketing teams, in a quick win intensive, and virtually every page had this error. And before that, I was not with those groups. I was with this Fortune 500 company, Fortune 100 company, and again, the same thing. So let's learn. Big or small, we make this mistake. A web page should be a conversation. You're probably figuring that out by now. And so a proper web page is flowing. And as it flows down, it's achieving a series of micro yeses, each one necessary as I draw you through the power of the value proposition down to the call to action. If I get these in the wrong order, you probably won't say yes. If I skip important ones, you probably won't say yes. One no, let's call it right here, turns this into a capital problem. In fact, one no stops the progress right here, and nobody gets to hear that skips that yes. What does that mean for you? See, the task of marketing is not to win one big macro yes, but to earn it through a whole series of tight, carefully engineered micro yeses. Now, keep that in mind, and this is what a great page looks like. And when should copy be long? I've taught it in here before. And when should it be short? Somebody tell me, when should copy be long? Any ideas? Any ideas? Yes. Dave said clarity. Yes. When you need enough content to achieve clarity, don't cut back, and long copy will drive higher performance results. When it's more than you need and you haven't simplified or layered it, it's getting in the way. But it should always flow towards an inevitable conclusion. Do you hear that? If you flow with me and if you are the right person, you should arrive at an inevitable conclusion that this product is the best product for you. Now, with this in mind, I want to show you what we're doing now on our web pages instead of this. We have a huge problem, and I'm a philosopher, and I study marketing not to understand commercial success, but to understand myself. I studied it because my original work is in philosophy and theology, and because I needed to know where I was going wrong, and because I wanted to understand how to help other people untangle the mess in our minds, because the moment you entered planet Earth, you were being marketed to. Your decisions were being influenced by conclusions, which were being influenced by what you were being fed in the form of observations. And you're still experiencing that in the elections and all over the world. If you really study what we're talking about, you can go back and look at your life and say, why am I even doing this? I've had marketers take these courses and quit their job because they said, I realized why I made the choice. It's the wrong choice, and I don't want to keep doing it. I'm not trying to get you to quit your job. I'm just trying to get you to think for yourself and not let somebody else do it for you. And so let me share with you the biggest problem I see outside of marketing, but particularly marketing is a lovely example of it. We are by nature copiers. Now, stay with me if you're thinking, well, this is getting far off copyright. No, it's not. Just stay with me because it'll add up in just a moment and you'll see. Sometimes the only way to get you there is to take you on a journey inside. Human beings, we've recently discovered, have a capacity, a particular item called a mirror neuron. The mirror neurons make it easier for us to mimic what we see. And it's one of the reasons our culture has evolved so powerfully. You have more mirror neurons than the average creature. And because of that, it's easier for you to see and copy. So you've grown up seeing and copying. You became a marketer and you saw and you copied. And when I use the word see, I mean it as a representative of all your senses. Most of us live our lives through seeing and copying. It's very dangerous. It can be very valuable when you copy the right things, but the problem is we copy the outside instead of the inside. You don't become a great thinker by reading what they wrote, the great thinker you admire. You become a great thinker by reading what they read. Do you hear me? You have to copy what happened on the inside to produce the outcome on the outside. Now, I'd love to stay there. I'd love to teach there for just a few minutes because I watch everywhere from the gym to business and in spiritual pursuits. We're always copying the wrong thing, frustrated with our outcomes. So stay with me and think about your website now, because here's what we've done as marketers. We take a big brand like Apple, which has achieved enormous results, and we copy, see, copy, see, copy. As my dad used to say, monkey see, monkey do. Primates have an unusually high number of mirror neurons, not as much as we do. When I say we, Homo sapiens, but they do have more, and that's why we use words like, aping something, for instance. That's why it's become a cliche. So we ape Apple, but we're aping the wrong thing about Apple. Apple makes these landing pages that don't flow in a sequence of thought. They are a stack. Just a stack of modules. One module stacked on another module, and it sort of feels like, well, if the first thing doesn't work, maybe this other thing, somewhere down the page, one of these items, and it just goes on, will reach out to them and get them to say yes. And it's a page designed when you don't know what to design, so you put it all there in a form of mini pages. You stack 10 pages together and you call it a landing page. That is not the way to win. That's a stack of blocks instead of a flow of thoughts. And you don't have a company like Apple that goes from bankruptcy, they were 4 months away when Steve took back over, to the largest company in the world. And we think, well, let's copy Apple. But that's not what did it. If that were the case, we could stand in line. When you want to launch a new product, David, you're on the line. I know you do seminars. I couldn't recommend David's work strongly enough. If you haven't thought about trusts and your family and what you're going to do when catastrophic illness might hit and you're trying to protect your assets, you need to talk to David Carrier, especially if you're in Wisconsin. And I mean that, really. I learned as much from my colleagues on these YouTube Live as you learn from me. And David's been teaching, I've been studying his work and I'm learning. But here's my point. You're not going to win, David, by asking people, teaches seminars to people who want to learn this. So when they show up, try making them wait for 3 days outside in a line. Give them tents, pass out bottles of water, and maybe attendance will go up and you'll see a great win. No, you wouldn't do that. Oh, David says Michigan. Did I say Wisconsin? I didn't say Wisconsin. Paul said Wisconsin. It was me saying Michigan all along. I don't know how I got so confused. David, maybe you just need to open up in Wisconsin also.
All those states are the same anyway.
Paul says all those states are the same. I'm not going to go there. Paul's, he's a bigot. All right. Now stay with me, guys, because listen, here's the point. If you copy Apple's web pages, you might as well copy the lines in front of their store. People aren't buying from Apple because of their web pages or the lines in front of their store. They're buying because of the value proposition that Steve brought to the market. And they're still buying based on Steve's value proposition because in my mind, much of what they've done has degraded. All I want you to see is that most websites look like this. And this is not what we want. I'm going to make that abundantly clear. I'm going to say no over this one. Okay? And yes over this one. So if you're writing copy, flow in a story in rising action. And if you're the leader, make sure the right story is being told because probably nobody's going to know that story as well as you do. And then look over here at this side and don't just stack a bunch of ideas on top of each other. I mean, all you want to do to test that idea is go to a bar tonight. Try this approach and then try that approach. Random stacks of information are not going to create a conversation or a relationship. All right? Good. Now, with you following this, I get to my last piece. But first, how do we improve this? Well, here's one that we have from our community. Guys, this is, and take a look. Can you see what's wrong? Now, I say this graciously to these people because they're just like you and I, trying to get a result. But I know what they're doing. They're copying the New York Times. And I wrote the approach for the New York Times. I tested it. The reason the New York Times first offered device-specific pricing is because they brought us in too late and they couldn't roll it back in time. And I warned them. And at that point, they had 5 to 7 different packages. And we got them to simplify it further. But they had bought a study from McKinsey. McKinsey, I'm not against you, but it was bad. It was choice framing. It was a deck. Didn't have the research, and they rolled it out that way, and eventually they made it work, but the whole world didn't like it. Did anybody really think the way to divvy up the New York Times is I'm going to charge you extra if you want to read it on your phone instead of your tablet? Bad approach. But see, on the internet, there isn't best practices. There's just pooled ignorance. Somebody's copying the New York Times exactly, and as they copy it, they fielded a approach that isn't as eloquent as the New York Times' execution, and what they have is a failure to create rising action, to draw me deeper and deeper in with more. Instead, I've got 2 boxes poorly communicating, hard to read, hard to understand, side by side, without any preference or meaning made for me. I've got to spend time trying to figure out which one I want. And if you are with this group, because I'm using your page, and if I haven't offended you, and if I have, I'm sorry, you just reach out to us and we'll help you with this page for free. And you can measure the result and see what happens when you get the psychology right. And you may be using this page because you're on one of those platforms that publications use and they're inflexible, hard to use. I won't name them. You may be held hostage by your technology, and I have nothing but empathy for you. But for my audience right now, learn. Can you see what's wrong? And Brett said, a confused mind says no. Yeah, the easiest way to resolve the tension that comes from confusion is to abdicate. All right. With all this in mind, let's move towards the final point. And I know you've been giving me lots of time signals, but what is my time? Come back to the window and tell me what I have left, because I'm, how much more?
We have 54 minutes in.
I'm 54 minutes in. I've got to stop soon. All right. Harness momentum in the climax. I'm going to try to do this fast. All right. All right, so here we go. Get more readers as early. By the way, I can't respond to all these comments coming in real time, but I love them. Keep them coming. I'm listening to comments on Apple. I'm listening to David Carrier talking about heart transplants and Stephen and many more. It's good stuff. It's really helpful to see where my audience's mind is at as we're teaching. So now we're moving towards the beginning of the climax, and the climax begins right here, and it's a sort of resolution of tension. It's the tension that keeps me moving forward. It's the tension that keeps people moving up against the inverted funnel. We've talked about the funnel. We've told you that it needs to be inverted. We've told you that people move up in a micro yes at a time. We've told you that gravity is working against you. We've said the funnel really looks like this. It's turned this way, not the way we typically see it. People are falling out, not falling in. Gravity is tearing them out, and you must have a resistant force. Now think about this when I come to the climax. What keeps me moving up the funnel? Because I don't want to move up the funnel. Do you hear me? Do you want to move up somebody's funnel? Do you wake up excited about moving up somebody's funnel? Nobody moves up a funnel because they have a, let's call it an acquired taste for funnel movement. No, we move up the funnel to resolve tension. And the tension comes because there's something we need, and we're trying to resolve the need. We're back to Maslow's hierarchy in basic psychology. And as they try to resolve the need, they move up in micro yeses. And the force drawing them up against all of that gravity saying, don't go, don't go, don't go, that force is the value proposition. Now, when they finally say yes, like buy, I'm going to buy, you got to be very careful. Listen to me. These last few minutes are as important as anything else we've done, because this is how that story has to keep rolling. Listen, it doesn't stop when they click on the button. The story is not over. How many of you think it would make sense if you're watching a television show and the hero finally sees the way out? And so maybe the hero's trapped inside of a giant plant with an evil genius who is about to blow the world up. And he is in the last moments running out of time. The clock is ticking. The bomb's about to go off. The world's about to explode. I'm being sarcastic, but I want you to get the point. At the moment the hero sees the way out, what are you going to do if at that exact moment the credits of the movie start rolling? I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to be pissed. Because something inside you needs to see resolution. It needs to see the hero winning. Now, the hero in this story is the customer, not the business. And that hero needs to win. And to help them win, you've got to do something extraordinary. You've got to help them see the way out. And I'm going to show you the way out right now. Here it is. At the bottom, right there, green button. What does it say? Boom. Get started. That whole call to action, get more readers, save 70%, there's your price. If I click on that button, I am moving towards resolution of the tension inside of me. And by the way, that tension started before I ever saw your website. It started when I realized I didn't have enough readers. It started when I thought, maybe if I could get some free press. It started then. It started when you got fed up with how much it cost to be on AdWords and you're looking for other ways to drive traffic. Tension began way back then. All you're doing as a great marketer is tapping into that tension. And by the way, intensifying it. You must intensify it. That's why you don't present a solution until people appreciate the problem. That's why it's an interlinking of problems that pulls them through and up the funnel with the power of the value proposition. And so ultimately what you are doing as a marketer is you are getting them to start their way out of the burning building. So they click on the green button, get started. But I got news for you. If you think it's over, if you think the story's over, you're going to have the same problem that the producers would have if you stopped the movie there. And yet, in most of the carts, for most of the people that are right now on this broadcast with me, and that will join us over the years, because I know with the power of this teaching, there should be dozens of you. Have you seen our little YouTube numbers? We may have hundreds before it's over with. You never know. The reality is, most of you right then, stop telling the story. Stop drawing me with tension and more value. You think that because I clicked the button, it's all resolved. And what happens is, do you see that action falling off? I'm going backwards to show you a slide. See that drop at the climax? That tension, that climax isn't truly reached and the action doesn't truly fall off until I'm experiencing the resulting benefits of the choice that I made. It doesn't even fall off until that package arrives and I'm enjoying it. Do you hear me? They're still getting on you on the internet and trying to see what day is it going to arrive. They want the tracking number. We're worried it's going to be late. We're still experiencing tension until we experience the actual resulting benefit. And you can't stop telling the story in the cart. You can't stop telling the story in the confirmation message. You can't stop telling the story in the follow-up to shipping. You're not even stopping that story in customer service. You are keeping tension, adding value, drawing them forward every single step of the way, or you're losing. So, if you're a copywriter, you've got to make certain that you realize that it's not clever word combinations that's going to win. It is a brilliant story told in a conversation. And if you are a senior leader trying to take advantage of what we've been teaching today in your business, you need to understand you cannot let go of this. No one else is going to see the whole, and most copywriters won't know what we're saying, but even if they did, they don't have your feel for the business. They don't have your acumen, your experience. And you need to be certain that that story is told from the beginning all the way to the end. When you do that and team up with your copywriters, you can create magic. And that concludes our session, except for reminding you, and I think I'm just going to let them respond by email because of our time.
You just type in the chat.
Yeah, we're going to run a test, another one. I'm glad you joined us today. We're getting ready to teach a whole session on Facebook. We have a whole series of tests. I'm going to talk to you about your Facebook campaigns. There's tests you haven't even seen yet, how you can improve performance there. It may be something you want to get your agencies to join too so they can learn. But I'm just going to skip this and just tell you that, and join us for an intensive. We'd love to have you there. But take a look at this. We need you to give us a group of new keywords to use. We're testing a psychographic audience. This is based on the mind rather than a demographic audience based on, external factors. Internal versus external when we sample and build an audience. And that's critical to your business. Learning the outcome of this test can help you, okay? So these are the keywords that we had last time. Give us more. Help us improve them. You can do it right now. You can email us, but we're going to take your thinking and incorporate it into the test so we can produce the best tests and all of us learn together. If I have anything to say at the end, it's just this. I think when I speak for an hour, it feels like we have the answers. And the truth is I've got more questions than I've got answers. It's embarrassing that I've done this for 30 years and I still don't know what it feels like I should know. But I can learn it together with you if we team up, help each other, and grow. Join us at a Quick Win Intensive, and thank you. Trust.